Yo, what's up, everyone? Welcome back to the Mindfully Curious podcast. This podcast is dedicated to curiosity about the human experience and creativity. During these conversations, these chats, the aim is to mindfully explore curiosity and how it can be an ally in our human experience. We will also be chatting about other topics that can be helpful during, again, our beautiful, paradoxical, complex human experience. My name is Steph and I am your host. You can connect with me at Rabbit Legion on Instagram. During today's episode, we are going to be chatting with at Manifesting Maverick. You can connect with him at Manifesting Maverick on Instagram, and he is also the host of the COVID Chronic podcast, available wherever you get your podcasts. During this episode, we talk about our personal journeys with spirituality, and you get to hear from two different perspectives on that. Some of the other topics that we chat about are creating opportunities, navigating the spectrum of life, the value of knowing yourself, acting as the master of your own universe, following synchronicity, time, intention, receiving feedback, and more. Thank you for being here, giving us your time and your love. If you have an extra minute, highly recommend you to leave us some feedback, a review, or just reach out and let us know what you think. Much love, everybody.
Manifesting Maverick, aka Steven. How's it going, man?
It's good. It's good. How are you?
I'm good. So happy to have you here. And I want to say that the reason I'm super excited to have you here is because I feel like you're one of the men that I've noticed have this really cool way to embody spirituality in a way where it doesn't seem forced or fake. It's just kind of like, oh yeah, no, like this dude's just like on this wave, period. For me, spirituality has been kind of a choppy dance. So I'm super curious to hear about like how, you came to be who you are today.
Hell yeah. I'm so with it. I appreciate the opportunity first off. Thank you for having and hosting a space for this and
My
allowing
pleasure.
people to be. So yeah, so to start it, it's funny, man. It's like whenever you think of that, to start something, for me, I immediately go back to my traumas and like the big moments of my life that I had to grow up or I had to find something else to fill. And I fall into a huge trauma that is I was raised in a broken family. My mom and dad divorced when I was like 3. From that, I was kind of put in the middle. One side of my family lived in another state, the other side lived in another side, and it was still drivable. You can still visit. I was seeing my dad every other weekend, and so it led this separation of identity, right? On one side of the family, you're this person. On another side, you're this person. And in the truth of it, you just want to be who you are, right? And the funny thing about that is as a kid, you just want to be understood. And what ends up happening is nobody understands you. So you're just stuck. You're stuck in kind of like in a different reality of what you could put. And so I think that's a big one that kind of instilled a lot of myself, of who I am now, because I had to learn to accept myself. And the art of accepting myself is what it is, even like this, like in this moment, you know what I mean? It's having a deja vu, like exactly what happened in the moment for the moment now. And it's an art of accepting. It's if you feel right, if you feel in the moment and as it's supposed to be, then allow that to be, the ultimate grounding is what I call it.
Okay, so I love that. And I just want to pause to say that
go for it.
When you say this acceptance,
Yes.
I kind of think that resonates with another word that I've been working on, which is surrender.
Mm-hmm.
So
completely. Yeah.
just wanted to know that I'll use this as a side note because I think this is like a really good perspective of like spirituality is different in
Mm-hmm.
everybody's view. And I would say like I'm a feminine woman and you're a
Mm-hmm.
masculine man. And for me, it's surrendering into
Mm-hmm.
whatever. And for you, it's
Mm-hmm.
accepting. So I love that.
Mm.
It's like you
Yeah,
get
the
to see both
parallels of it.
sides. So yeah, thank
Mm-hmm.
you for that.
You're
So you
welcome.
start with the hard stuff,
Yeah, yeah,
life throws you shit.
yep.
And then what
It's
happens?
so you realize that the card that you're dealt, you can't change. So if you can't change a card, you accept it. And for me, it was an acceptance, and it was kind of just learning as I go and learning as I grow. I practically raised myself. Um, my parents were young. With age comes different responsibilities. They live different lifestyles, different lives, and I was a byproduct of the broken home. And but what really got me into spirituality was the relationship with myself, right? It's raising myself and being one with myself. I had to have an opportunity to really understand self, and it's not really me speaking, it's me speaking towards the universe. When you're alone for all those opportunities, and I call them opportunities and not moments, because it's an opportunity for you to understand yourself. um so
Just
just
dropping all these golden little nuggets.
just little ones. But yeah, having true opportunity to allow yourself to understand and to truly understand yourself. And I think that was the key thing. Dude, I love how she has the Buddha in the back. The treats.
Yes, yeah. So sorry, there was like a weird
Oh, you're
little
good.
lapse here when I was like super rude and I just walked away because my
Oh, you're good.
dog was being an asshole.
You're good, dude. You're good. You're good.
Um,
Um,
but yeah,
but
like
yeah,
I'm not
so
even embarrassed. But so I
oh,
totally get what you're saying with I love that you explained how you felt like you and your personalities felt like you had to split because you had those two different lives, and that's gonna be so hard when you're so little. But then you
yeah.
talk about this middle place where you got to spend time with yourself and reflect. And I think that had you not had that opportunity
Mm,
to
yeah.
create that space for yourself, perhaps you wouldn't be the person that you are today. And
Oh,
I
for
love
sure.
that.
Yeah.
Turning
Well, thank you.
adversity into opportunity.
Yeah, that's it. That's it.
That is one of the gifts of creative people. And guess what? Everybody's
Yeah,
creative, so we're not
that's
excluding
it.
anyone.
Uh-huh. I agree completely. So,
So, how does this link to spirituality?
honestly, it was accepting myself. I think the ultimate acceptance is spirituality. It's to say that you're the way you are, and that's in the image of whatever you believe in made you that way. So that alone allows you to take a deep breath and to sit back and to not worry, to not really have to carry judgment or even have these other ideas, these negative thoughts in your mind. If you can accept what it is and live in that, therefore you accept yourself and you accept the universe, you accept spirituality because it is. You know, as I sip the water is the same as the vastness of the ocean, right? There's no form of two identities, it just is. So for me, that was the acceptance. It was doing all these things growing up and having these cool little minor abilities, I call it, and these small little interactions with the universe that I didn't realize were at a young age until I am now in the age that I am now, to realize and look back that that was something different. That wasn't just like an everyday occurrence, you know. And a lot of these things have a name, and when you start giving name to something, it creates value, right? So I can identify the object to be a specific thing that more people believe in now. And now it's like, then I can't be lying. This can't be false. It is what it is. You believe or you don't. And if you're living and existing, then you're believing. You
So
know.
you kind of start seeing patterns, like as you're accepting what comes to you, whether it's,
Mm-hmm.
you know, something fun or something perhaps a little bit more challenging, you kind of start seeing patterns.
Yeah. Totally.
And so these patterns that you refer to, is this kind of like something that you can tie a story to? Like, is there, because I mean, I know for me, I totally resonate with what you're saying. And for me, when I go back and think about it, these patterns of weird things that happen that I was like, holy shit, there's no way that just happened.
Yeah.
For example, like I got into a terrible car accident and I
Mhm.
literally just don't know how I'm not dead or just garbage, you know?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
not the only time that's happened. Like there's been a lot of times where I'm like, shit, like I don't know how I'm not dead or like in
Yeah.
way worse shape than
Yeah.
I am.
Yeah. Yeah. And well, that's the thing. It's like, you know, you see things like that, and as much as you could say it's a pattern, it's also a miracle. You know what I mean? So then you start seeing the patterns and miracles. And once you, like I said, once you can take a name and give it value, it becomes a whole different perspective, a whole different thought. And that's it. It's understanding where you are in life and the opportunity that you have to live, right? And because, you know, shit could always happen. You can die tomorrow. So instead of dying, I decide to live. And the universe corresponds with that. The universe sees you wanting to live, and it sees you giving energy and giving light. So therefore, it only attracts what it sees. So then, boom, you have opportunities, and that creates the existence, right? So.
I also feel like whenever you get to share with people everything in the spectrum of life, like the good stories, the bad stories, or not even the good stories or the bad stories, but again, the fun ones
Yeah.
and the more challenging ones.
Yeah.
I really feel like it's awesome to have one of each ready to go, like at any party or networking event,
Yeah.
just
It's true.
because that really gives people like an image of like the spectrum that you're able to inhabit. And it's
Yeah.
like if you're like a business event, you know, and you tell them like, oh, some story that like shows like you're also like really in touch with like the spiritual side, you know,
Yeah.
which I would say it's kind of like opposite of like business or what we call like business culture in this world, in this country. And I think that it's cool to give people that kind of insight into your spectrum, because then it really kind of enables them to choose where in that
Yeah.
spectrum they want to drop in. And of course, you know,
Yeah.
we can only do the best of our abilities or whatever.
Yeah.
But now we talk about some challenging things. What would be like one of those stories, like a peak experience story that you want to share with us?
Man, I have a huge recent peak experience story, and you know that had to be with COVID. Like the pandemic itself really questioned my ideas of spirituality and my identity of my spirituality. You know, per usual, it hit everybody hard, you know, and hopefully everybody can grow in the way they're supposed to with it, you know. And for me, in January, I ended up breaking up with an ex, and I was literally homeless. I was couch surfing. Me and my dog were on my friend's couch in Atlanta, and all I had was a longboard. And it was these death-defying moments where I still had to go on. Life had to go on. You had to do what you got to do. And I'd find myself, you know, longboarding to a bar at midnight in a thunderstorm, you know, and just getting to work soaked. You know, I'm sitting there, you know, serving drinks and doing these things, and I'm soaking wet. My whole experience getting there, my whole reality shifted, and I still have to put on a smile, right? At the end of the day, the sun's going to rise and you just got to keep going. So you're going to choose either if you are okay with it and you're going to succeed, or you're not and you're going to suffer, right? And I think
That
that
right
was a
there,
big
another
moment.
golden nugget. Sorry to interrupt you, but
Oh,
that's a
you're good.
fucking mindset. And it's such a mind
Yeah.
fuck that literally you do have the ability to turn the fucking switch off. It's not
Yeah.
easy and the shit's still painful, but sorry. Please
Yeah.
keep
Oh, you're
going.
good. You're good. You're good. So, you know, I had a moment with that, and it was ultimate acceptance. It was saying, you know what, at this moment in time, you need to change, or you are changed, and you need to accept the new vibration you're going to vibrate at. So it might be rough right now, but it's because the essential things around you are changing. It's changing for better. And, you know, and that happened. And that was January. And you look back to where I am now, And it's a 180 completely. And it's an identity that I've grown and I've understood, like the hero's journey, right? You go on to experience something and you go off on a voyage. You come back from the voyage from what you learned, you slay the dragon, and you come back into your old reality. The difference is, they never talk about this in the book, is that you are no longer fitting your old reality. So you are now molded differently. So therefore, people around you or your reality has to understand how you are now. But you got to keep going out, keep going for the battles, keep doing. It's a cycle. It's a pattern. It is legit a pattern.
Yes, you just touched on 2 points about the hero's journey that we don't really talk about. It's a pattern and it cycles, and it's like, just because today I slayed this like badass dragon doesn't mean that on my next one I'm gonna come back on my shield. But that's cool, we, like, our spirit lives to see another day. And what was the other thing that you said we don't talk about? The cycle part. And
it's the molding of how people see you when you come back from your journey, right? And
yes,
it's huge. It's for me, it comes in for my story, for my personal growth, is because my family never seen me as who I was to begin with. So I already am not fitting a mold because they can't identify of who I really am. So now I go out in the world, and as an adult, I come back and it's just a visual concept where it's either I make a choice where I change and I show them my true form and my true self now, or I go back to an old mold just to keep it going.
Yes.
And that's you living through your highest self, or you living through your low self. So
would you say that, I mean, because when I hear you say that, I kind of think, well, that could sound to someone a little bit selfish. And, I'm just playing devil's advocate here.
Yeah.
Just because, I mean, I did wonder this myself when I was coming up to this type of information. It's like, well, if I'm going to be like my number one advocate and my number one fan, then where do I find that spot where it's like, if I'm affecting somebody with my self-care or my self-compassion or whatever, it's like, do you, like, how do you feel about that? Because I feel like it can be a tricky part of the spectrum to navigate.
Well, I see it as a trigger for a trigger, right? Anytime I'm triggering you, which means anytime I give off to trigger for you, it's me triggering myself, vice versa. So if you treat yourself the best way that you think you should be treated, and you care for yourself, and I'm affected by that, then I need to look internally and say, why am I affected? And that alone should question me to do something better and be a higher vibration, right? So I had an experience with this last year. Me and my boys, we went up to the mountains and did some psychedelics and had a great time. And we came back with the idea of, what is it to push a button? To push a button in somebody is to level them up, right? You have an experience in this moment. If I push your button, you have a choice. You can either level up and grow, or decline. Exactly. And then from that's it. So if I'm triggering you and what I'm doing in my essence triggers you, then I'm just being me, and that means I'm doing something right. If I'm not triggering you, that means that, hey, then I'm not raising my vibration, that I'm allowing myself to be lower than what I truly need to be.
Yes, so much yes. And one thing that I want to add is that I feel like when I raise my vibration, and by that I mean, like, I show up as this person that I know I can be, and that I've trained to be, like, of a higher standard around, in a safe environment. And that now that I've practiced that in a safe environment, I can bring that mindful person out to play with the rest of the world.
Exactly.
And by being that person outside, I give everybody else permission to try something
to do the same.
else. Yes, maybe not the same, but like, question.
Yeah. Well, that's it. I mean, it's living through an experience as an example, right? So I want myself personally, maybe that's selfish, to be the best version of myself, but if that can empower you to put something in you, to do a little greater, then why not? If we all live like that, the world would be so different. And that's what the biggest change is. It's the world we're going into and we're revolving into is a place where you can be authentically yourself. And that alone will spark the interest of everybody else around you to just be them. And then a lot of our issues that we have internally don't matter, you know?
Yes, because we're constantly creating and recreating our world and like
That's
our
right.
reality. And, you know, if we're strong enough, we can hold that world and, you know, maybe invite a couple people into it. I feel like when people go into romantic relationships, that's kind of like the smallest step into that world. It's like, okay, cool, like I can bring this one person into my intimate world, you know, and then it's like, oh, maybe like a family would be the next step, you know. But I do agree with you that we're stepping into a new world, because more and more you find all these people that are just like ready to meet you there, and it's fucking amazing, because it's just like you have all these amazing friends like available to you, like anywhere you decide to show up as that person. It's fucking awesome. It's insane.
Well, that's also the thing too. It's like a beacon responds to a beacon, right? It's the lighthouse effect. It's I'm going to see the light and I'm going to attract things, moth to a fire. It's the same concept. If I act my highest self, you're going to act your highest self, and therefore we're going to navigate toward each other and create magic, you know?
Yes, and we fucking need magic right now in the world, you know. There's so much fear out there. There's just so much fear and shame.
Yeah.
And I would love, you know, for anybody that's curious listening to this conversation to just try to tap in. Like, I know you always put out a bunch of like really good information out on your social media. I try to be the same. Do you have any like favorite resources, like books or podcasts that you want to share?
Yeah, man. It's so funny because this is how I do it. And this is why it always hits gold, is when I put some stuff out. I'll put out things that I need to hear. So when I record a video, I'm not recording for people to hear. I'm listening so I can listen to myself. And it's my own video diary of me speaking to myself. And you know what? It relates. So why not do it? And I mean, for anything, if I can walk down the street and see a sign that says golden smiles and I have an epiphany, I'm like, dude, I need to say this to myself. And you know what? Why don't I just record it? And there we go. Now I have content. You know, it's content within your universe. You're manifesting your content as you live, as it should be. You know?
So,
hi, cat. Sorry, there's a cat ran by.
Bro, that's one of the things that I personally consider like my spiritual signs are like animals, you know, because nature obviously holds so much life, and the fact that we can share our lives to this like crazy level with animals, aka like pets, it's fucking awesome. Where I come from, because I'm from Mexico, like I was just there like 2 weeks ago visiting, and there's fucking street dogs there, you know, like people keep their dogs like on their roof, like dogs live outside. Like in America, we have this like amazing relationship with pets, and I just love it.
I agree. You know what, actually you should watch, because I'm actually getting back into it. It's have you ever seen The Golden Compass?
Yes.
How they have their demons, right? They released a new HBO show based on it. It's called His Dust. And I just started up yesterday, and it talks about relationships between, you know, spirituality and the people. But what they do is they have demons, and the demon is an animal that is most like inner representation of themselves. Oh, and it's a beautiful experience on how we see ourselves. Sorry, the cat came by. I got excited. So it's cool. If you haven't seen it, you know, I would say watch it. It's some cool spiritual hidden messages that people probably need to listen to. So,
see, I love that you just pointed out that there are messages in these TV shows and movies that we watch. And I think like that's something that not a lot of us think about. We're just like out there, you know, absorbing all of this culture unconsciously, you know, and we do that when we're children, and I know we still do that sometimes when we're adults.
Yep.
So how can you like pick what content you kind of went into it a little bit, that you create the content that you want to have access to, But that's pretty cool because you get to create it. And I know everybody could create their own content, but let's say somebody is at the stage where they still need to get inspired to get to the creative stage. What are some like resources that can me help somebody like push them past that threshold and be like, okay.
Yeah. First thing I do is I take your inner dialogue of life and hit rewind. And you go all the way back to the moments as a child where you really enjoyed yourself and enjoyed life. And sit in that moment and understand what inspired you and what you liked and what you enjoyed. And dissect that. Really see why you enjoy those things. And in those small dissections, you're going to find content. You're going to find a new gateway that you can reach within yourself and within an object that you identified with, that you can take from that moment and bring it to your adulthood and your adult life. And now, for instance, if I went back and saw the Power Rangers and I thought about, wow, man, it was so cool to see them inspiring and seeing them in their ninja attire, you know, and I fast forward to my life now, I look at this mask, I look at this evolution around my life. How can I implement that? Well, I'm going to create something based on that specifically, you know, because I think when you digest a lot of outside conflicts and a lot of outside influences, it turns into you're just absorbing culture. And that's what happens. You don't understand the truth of what the culture is. So, and from that, you're just absorbing nothing. You're subconsciously absorbing nothing. You know?
Yes, I love that advice. And now let's talk a little bit about your dance with creativity. Like, you had this time to spend with yourself, get to know yourself, question your reality. And then at what point did you decide like, hey, this creativity thing, you know, really just kept coming up and repeating and repeating? Because it does take a lot of resources to continue engaging with creativity.
Yeah. I think it came from a sense of just expressing, you know what I mean? From being a youth and not able to express to where you can express yourself now freely and to keep doing it, you know, and it's a bond. It's an expression of what you trust. You trust yourself enough to express yourself, and that people will see it and not take, you know, shame for it. I think that's another thing people, you know, they're afraid to express because they don't want people to think anything other than what it is. And at the end of the day, none of that matters. All that matters is you are expressing, because that's why you're here, to express in your unique way.
So what is your unique way to express yourself?
You know, what's
or like
funny?
Your main outlet or something.
It changes so much now, because I think, you know, as being an adult and to do whatever I want to do, I'm able to see different things and just have a small inkling towards it and then absorb it. And to say, like, for instance, right, I'm working on a clothing line. And that was specifically because me looking at the Power Rangers, you know, something very influential to me. And now I'm creating a whole vintage clothing line, and now a podcast, because I'm like, hey, I want to give people a place to understand things and to have freedom to speak. So why not do that? So anything that just fires up, that you feel in your soul, makes you happy, makes you excited, jump on it, because that's the pattern. The pattern you're creating is jumping on an opportunity.
Yes, so much yes to that. And that's something that I highly encourage anybody listening, is to take that advice, you know, like anybody can do anything. Now, that doesn't mean that you are going to be able to successfully do everything, but it's cool to try different things, because like you mentioned earlier, the best way, or it seems like experience is just such an efficient way for us to learn things about the world and about ourselves. And just kind of surf that wave. And I feel like creativity can be a practice that is accessible to anyone and really helps us become brave and more like settled into ourselves. Just because in order to do creativity, like whether you're painting or making movies, recording podcasts, like ultimately you're going to have to share that work with someone. And if you engage in that cycle over and over, it's like creating, sharing, And nobody can say that they're not creative just because we all have thoughts and you're
Yeah.
creating those motherfuckers. So that means if you're making thoughts right now, yes, you are creating and you are
Yeah.
creative. So buck up, and then we do what?
Then you do. And I think one thing that's really interesting that a lot of people don't realize is that creating it's a relationship between you and what you believe in, right? If you were to say you yourself are a higher image or you're created divinely, right? And then your art, your creation will be divine. So if you have to believe that, you have to create a relationship between you and yourself to believe what you're going to create. And a lot of people, their first thing that they do is they're afraid to release what they create because, why? You think about in the sense of what it represents and where it's coming from, then your creation is nothing but value. You need to express it. You need to put it out. You need to accept it, let it accept you, and to just keep doing. And that's who we are,
Yes. And when I heard you say that, I think like a lot of obviously, the first thing people create are thoughts. But then one of the like big rites of passage that we still have in our modern culture is having children. And that's creating. And that seems a little bit freaky to me to think like, oh shit, the second thing I create after my thoughts is another life that I'm going to be like in charge of.
Exactly.
So again, it seems like creativity really a good practice to engage. It just seems responsible.
Yeah, that's what it is. That's exactly what it is. It's an infinite recycle. It's infinite itself.
And it really did sound when you were describing this cycle that in a way creativity can be like a gateway to get to know yourself, to experience yourself and like challenge yourself in a way where it might be physical because what you're getting creative might be like jumping off cliffs on your motorcycle or something.
Yeah.
But it can also be as easy as something that's not going to really be scary in a way where your health or your life is threatened.
I agree. Yeah, completely.
So how do you deal with feedback? Like when you create someone and somebody gives you feedback that might be, not really even good feedback, but, maybe just a reflection of whatever you or your work triggered in somebody else. How do you how do you stay grounded in yourself?
I think the first thing you gotta understand is the perspective of feedback, right? It's one, do you honor the person who's giving you the feedback? Because I believe at the end of the day, people on different journeys, different ideas, different perspectives, take it with a grain of salt. Because if you listen to everybody and everybody says, everybody's going to be a critic and they're going to say they can do it better or they have this idea or that idea. And that's great. I think it's good to be heard and it's good to be listened to. But unless the person is willing to create with you, then take it more of as a, what's the word for it? An analytical breakdown. To be like, okay, well, my creation triggers this person this way. So do I want to continue to do this or do I want to change it up? Allow their experience of expression to change how you create to see what pattern you want to, disrupt. I guess will be the key to it.
I love that because by doing so, like thinking about what pattern you want to interrupt, like with your message, is thinking about what do I want to communicate. And that's just a really important thing when we set ourselves to create, is creating with intention.
Yeah,
because anything created with intention is going to be for the good of all. Because there is just no way that if you were actually mindful about everything to that degree that you would be doing asshole things. It just would not happen. Too.
Yep. I think intentionality and time. People all day will forget about time and the experience of time does nothing but progress, right? I'm not going to be a legend at sewing if I learn to sew tomorrow or yesterday. it's going to take time. It's 90 years, 80 years, whatever. The longevity of it is where you grow. You can have a gift and you can have a little special quirk about you, but unless you're willing to put in the time to grow it, then, you can't expect to give out these jaw-dropping things. And that's just the experience of relationships of the world is time, and intention. Time and intention are key. Always.
So time and intention are so key. So I want to kind of rewind a little bit when we were talking about the feedback. So we kind of touched on how you deal with feedback that might be considered like negative, but have you ever read the book The Four Agreements by Don Miguel Ruiz?
I have, yeah.
Okay, so the second agreement is don't take anything personally. And when I read that, I was like, well, yeah, I kind of connected that to the feedback loop where it's like, okay, if somebody says you're stupid, I'm not just going to believe that I'm stupid because they said so. But the second part that he kind of mentions there is to not take anything personal, nothing personal, including compliments. So would you share a little bit on that side? Because I know for me, I was always super influenced by my mom, and she always made sure that I kept my, I would call it like humbleness high. So that's how I learned how to deal with that. How about you?
So for me, I mean, I call it like an ego checker, and especially in my industry, and creative industry itself, you are your biggest critic, but also, you hear 1,000 no's, you hear 10,000 no's before you hear a yes. And, coming from a background of, not a small town, but a very controlled environment to an open world, hearing 1,000 yeses is usual. And then hearing one no is kind of freaking out, especially when you're a kid, So coming to a new world where you hear nothing but no's, it really puts you in the mindset of like the Four Agreements, take it with a grain of salt for the positive and negative, because at the end of the day, they're both duplicates, right? If I'm always positive and somebody hits me with something negative, I can be, I guess, too humbled, like you were saying, and where I can't physically connect to the world, or the opposite, where I'm too down and too, blue would be the experience, and to the point where I can't be happy because I'm just always in a low vibration or a sad feeling, so it's finding the medium.
Dude, and that's a great thing, finding your medium, like on your own, because I was kind of put, like if I was a gun, my mom just right away put like that silencer on me, So it's like, I just never thought anything about it, like she was always like, oh, you're such a great artist, but like too bad that's like a talent that's never gonna like yield any results for you and shit like that, So it's like, I had to work on that from like a negative numbers kind of way, just because of that. But the reason I like to ask that question is because a lot of the times people are like, well, if I have infinite creative power, then how do I not become a Hitler? And I feel like this just speaks to that if you're doing it with intention, if you're being impeccable with your word, you're not taking things personally, like you're not gonna go to that side, because in order to have access to this creative power and the world of abundance, like you have to 100% commit to it, devote yourself to it, and just change your mindset, because this does go against what traditional culture has us believe, at least in my opinion.
I agree.
And I think that right there is spirituality. Like you're choosing this rather than that, and devoting, like becoming a devout visitor of that temple, whatever you choose to make that.
Yeah. I agree.
So let's see how we're doing on time here. I think we got about 15 minutes left. Now, I know that you're about to start your podcast. Do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, man. So I've decided to kind of create a new space for people, and I've been wanting to do this forever. This is another thing. This is one of those things I put off for forever, and for no odd reason, just because I just didn't believe, I guess. I don't know. Whatever. But so
or didn't
I'm
have time yet.
I guess that's what it is. I wasn't in the evolution of self for the podcast, you know. So I'm creating a podcast, and it's going to be called COVID Chronic. And basically, it's a space where you can come and hang out. You know, I want to talk about spirituality. I want to talk about politics. I want to talk about religion, anything in a sense that is a positive intention, you know. And I think if people can find a way, like, you know, to understand the light that's produced with it and can feel, then, you know, come on in and come hang out. And hoping to start it by next week, get everything finalized and push forward, and just see where it goes, you know. But just a space to hang out, to be you.
I love that. And I do love podcasting just because it opens up this like awesome channel of communication where we're literally changing the mindset of a conversation to going into it with intention and then just trying to perform, you know, towards that intention. And it's cool that everybody gets to witness that.
Yeah, I agree. Completely
Because
agree.
These conversations are not planned. They're not scripted, you know. It's just basically this good live shit.
Yeah, it is as it should be.
Indeed. So, do you have any favorite books or other resources that people that maybe want to try to access this type of knowledge, information, get inspired, can turn to?
I would say a big one that I enjoyed, read as a kid, is it's going to be The Alchemist. Alchemist is huge. It relates to more of an experience of just going with the flow and letting it be, and the transition of life. You know, for me, that empowers me because it makes you realize that in the moment you might not be ready for what's ahead. So just focus on this moment and stop worrying about what's ahead and what's in the past. Just absorb yourself here and grow as you're supposed to be, and you will become that thing that you're looking for, the manifestation you seek. A second good one I just finished reading was Superior Man. I finished that about 2 months ago. It kind of left me a little interesting, like, distastefulness in my mouth towards the end. And that's simply because, you know, just how people choose wording and how they express, which is cool, which is just like, you know, the Four Agreements talking about, you know, how you take criticism or how you understand things, how you understand, obtain information, and, you know, take what you can, what you grow from, and move on to the next. I love Joe Rogan Podcast. He gets really good information. If you haven't seen it, when he interviews Kevin Hart for the second time, and to really see the mind of an entrepreneur and really see how hard and how long it takes for success. You know, it's both time. You know, you see Kevin Hart and these giant individuals where they're at, and you don't see the work they put in, and the fact that these guys have been fighting this journey since 22, 23. And yeah, they just hit 30s and they finally reach it. So believe in yourself, trust yourself, and allow yourself to be at peace with the time. And, you know, I like Gary Vee. He's amazing as well. Talks about flipping. He has the idea of kind of accepting and just going and just saying, if you want to do it, then you can do it, because it's that easy. And you know, your podcast as well, you know, you host awesome information and you ask the right questions. So if you can, you know, keep doing that and keep inspiring people and put yourself out there, because we're listening, you know, and things need to be heard, things need to be said, and you create a space, and this is what the world needs. So thank you.
Hey, thank you. That was so beautifully said. And thank you so much for saying that. You know, just like everyone else, you go through hard times, you're like, oh, is this worth it? But at the end of the day, fuck yeah, it's worth it, because we get to share information. And like, I feel like podcasts are going to end up being like the 21st century's Greek mythologies, you know? And I'm not saying that I'm like at that level or anything, but little by little, a little becomes a lot. So
becomes a lot.
Yeah. So think about your dream. Even if you're not like sure what to do, just try to imagine it the best you can, and just try to get there one step at a time. And don't be scared to rework the journey or the path or whatever, you know, like it's cool to fuck up.
Yeah, completely. You're always going to. That's the thing, is nobody tells you that you're supposed to. And You're supposed to. You got to reinvent yourself. You have to continue. You have to evolve. The only way to evolve is to change something, which means something didn't work. So, ta-da.
Super easy. I know. It sounds so ridiculous because everything just mindset. Switch the switch. It's, just like that.
Right. Oh, man. So true.
It does take work, but if we are here for each other to support ourselves through, that crossing of the threshold, it's kind of just like fitness. You're not going to get to doing those like crazy moves with super heavy weights like day 2. You have to work.
Yeah,
and don't be scared of the work.
Yeah, that's it. We're here to work. I think the biggest thing is people don't want to work. And at the end of the day, to manifest to work, you have to put in some elbow grease, because not everything's done by nothing, So small switch flips.
just tiny switch flip. No biggie here. No biggie.
That's all you need.
Well, thank you so much for being here with me, for sharing your story, for sharing your light. And I can't wait to hear your podcast and see all of your new projects, including your clothing line inspired by Power Rangers. That's fucking dope. Right. And any last words for the audience out here?
Man, it's be you, to understand yourself and to be gentle. I think that's the hugest one. It's as the helicopter goes above, is to allow yourself to be gentle with yourself, because at the end of the day, we have this one life, and if you are too stressed out or too worried or too frightened or whatever, just know you have the moment to relax. So,
the moment is right now.
That's it. Be in it. I love your dogs, yo.
That's why my artist name is Rabbit Legion, because I'm just all about that dog shit.
Yes. I love that. Amazing. Well, thank you again. I really appreciate you.
Hey, thank you. I appreciate you. Keep up the good work. I know you will. And I will post all your links and information on the show notes.
You're amazing.
All right, my brother. I love you so much. Take care.
Love you.
Goodbye,
you
everybody.
Peace. Bye.